Hello and welcome to this video lesson about telling the time. In the previous lessons, we learned about analog clocks. Let's take a moment to remember all of the things we have learned already. We learned that 12 is at the top of clock face and 6 is right below at the bottom. We also learned that 3 is on the right hand side and 9 is opposite on the left. We learned that the small hand is the hour hand and it takes 12 hours to do one full rotation of the clock face. When the big hand is at 3, it is a quarter past the hour. When the big hand is at 9, it is a quarter to the hour. And when the big hand is at 6, it is half past the hour. We learned that the big hand is the minute hand and it takes 60 minutes to do one full rotation of the clock face. We now know that analog clocks have a face, hands, and numbers. And we know that the clock face is divided into halves and quarters. Now it is time to move on and learn about the other type of clock, the digital clock. Let's take a look at the different parts of a digital clock. Instead of a face like an analog clock, a digital clock has a display like this. The digital clock display has two parts, separated by these two dots. The first section on the left tells us information about the hours, while the second section on the right tells us about minutes. Now, there is one very important difference between an analog clock and a digital clock. While an analog clock can tell us how many minutes past the hour it is, it can also tell us how many minutes to the hour it is. For example, quarter to 12. A digital clock cannot do that. A digital clock can only count the hours and the minutes that have already passed during the day. Now that might sound confusing, so let's explain what that means. A new day always starts at midnight, and a digital clock shows this as 00 hours and 00 minutes. What that means is that 0 hours have passed and 0 minutes have passed in this new day, which has started at midnight. After half an hour has passed, the digital clock display looks like this. That means that 0 hours have passed, but 30 minutes have passed. That means that the time is half past midnight, or half past 12 in the morning. After 60 minutes have passed, this is what the digital display looks like. That means that 1 hour has passed since midnight, and no minutes. That means that the time is 1 o'clock in the morning. After an hour and a half has passed, the display looks like this. It's telling us that 1 hour has passed and 30 minutes has passed since midnight. That means that the time is 1:30 in the morning. After 8.5 hours have passed, the display looks like this. How many hours and minutes have passed now? Yes, 8 hours have passed and 30 minutes have passed since midnight. That means that the time is 8:30 in the morning. That's the time we usually start school. What time do we usually go out to yard for small break? After 10 hours have passed, the digital clock looks like this. And that means that 10 hours have passed since midnight. That means that the time is 10 o'clock in the morning, and that is when we usually go for our small break. But what about big break? This is what the clock says after 12 hours have passed since midnight. This means that the time is 12 o'clock in the afternoon, or midday. That's when we usually take our lunchtime. Now, at midday, something very interesting happens. The analog clock counts from 11 in the morning to 12 midday, or another name for midday is noon. And once it gets to midday, it starts counting at 1 o'clock again. But this time, it is 1 o'clock after noon. Now, some people find it hard to tell the time on a digital clock after midday. But here's a little tip to help you out. If the digital hour display shows a number 13 or higher, we simply take 12 away from it to find out what hour it is. So when we look at this first, we see 13 hours. What time is that on the clock? Let's just take 13, take away 12, leaves us with 1. So that means that the time is 1 o'clock, but it is 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Now try this one. 18 is bigger than 13, so the display in the hours section is bigger than 13. So we can subtract 12 from 18. 18 take away 12 is 6, and that means that the time is 6 o'clock in the afternoon. In this example, 20 hours and 30 minutes have passed since midnight. Now, 20 is definitely a bigger number than 13 in the hours section. So, we take 20, we subtract 12, and that leaves us with 8. And that means that it is 30 minutes past 8 o'clock in the afternoon. So what have we learned in this lesson? We have learned how to tell the minutes on a digital clock by looking at the display on the right-hand side of the dots in the middle. We've learned how to tell the hour on a digital clock by looking at the display on the left-hand side. We know that a digital clock can only tell us how many hours and minutes have passed in a day since midnight. We know that a digital clock starts counting from midnight every night. We know that a digital clock does not have a face. Instead, it has a display. And we also learned a very valuable trick, that if the display reads an hour number higher than 12, then we can subtract 12 to find out what hour we are talking about. For example, 15 hours, take away 12 hours, means it is 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Now try these examples to practice. 4 hours and 30 minutes have passed since midnight. That means it is 30 minutes past 4 o'clock in the morning, or 4:30 in the morning. 11 hours and 30 minutes have passed. That means that it is 30 minutes past 11 o'clock in the morning. 16 hours and no minutes have passed since midnight. Whenever we see a number here in the hours section on a digital clock that is bigger than 12, we know we are talking about the afternoon. Now 16 is a higher number than 12, so subtract 12 from 16 leaves us with 4, and that tells us that it is 4 o'clock in the afternoon. 23 hours have passed since midnight. 23 is a bigger number than 12 in the hours. So we subtract 12 from 23, and that gives us 11. This means that it is 11 o'clock at night. 19 hours and 30 minutes have passed since midnight. 19 in the hours section is definitely bigger than 12, so we subtract 12 from 19. That leaves us with 7, so we know that it is 30 minutes past 7 o'clock in the afternoon, or 7:30. Well done! I hope you found this video lesson helpful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Slán!